Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at the £600-ish gaming PC that you can build yourself, save yourself a ton of money and actually have a very good gaming experience. Keep watching to find out how. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at the £600-ish gaming PC that you at home can build for yourself relatively easily if you do a little bit of sensible shopping, a little bit of deal hunting, and potentially you can build something very similar to this. This is our £600-ish gaming PC, which actually even does throw in a little bit of RTX magic, which is absolutely awesome. It looks really nice. It's a full-size ATX, so you've got plenty of room to grow into and lots of room for development and also adding things like water cooling, etc. should you wish to. Now we're going to go through today, talk about the components we've used. We'll go through a PC part picker list. We're also going to show you some of the performance that we can get out of this little system, gameplay, etc. and also obviously productivity type tasks as well. And at the end, we'll be coming back with some of my recommendations and things that I would have done differently. So make sure you watch all the way to the very end. So let's go through the parts that we've used on this particular build. Now the case is from Aerocool, so this is the Aerocool One Eclipse. This is actually the white version, believe it or not. It's got a little bit of white to it on the top and the sides, as you can already see there. Nice little case, and you can quite often pick these up as a little bit of a bargain, somewhere in the region of about £40 here in the UK, normally about £37 plus postage, so can come in for a very good price. Also, when it comes down to things like the processor, scored an absolute deal on the processor. We're using the Ryzen 5 3600, which is a 6-core, 12-thread processor, and will turbo boost up to 4.2 GHz without any problems whatsoever. When it comes to cooling, we've gone with something which is possibly going to be a bone of contention, and certainly you can do better in terms of price-wise at the moment. And we're using the Arctic A35 RGB cooler. Nice cooler, keeps things really nice and cool under very good noise threshold, so it's not going to be a noisy PC in the background where it's just going to be whining away, although you possibly can hear the fans. That is something which is a little bit on the noise side. The fans on the front do seem to have a very slight little tick to them, but for the price we paid, I think we can overlook that. When it comes to the platform that we've put this on, we've gone for somewhat an oldie but a goodie. This is using the MSI B450 Pro Carbon Wi-Fi Max. This is a great motherboard. It's got all the features you'd expect, decent VRM setup. We've also got plenty of USBs, addressable RGB. It is on the B450 platform, so there are going to be some limitations, and that is something we're going to talk about later on in the video if you decide to go in a slightly different direction. But as it goes with this particular graphics card in here, this platform is absolutely fine. RAM-wise, we've gone with an absolute bargain for RAM. We've gone with the Viper Steel 3200 MHz kit. Runs really well, and we're still getting some really good results. Again, this is the B450 platform, so DDR4 3200 is pretty much the sweet spot for that platform. You can, depending on the processor, squeeze a little bit more performance out of it, but due to the way the boards are made and the tracks, etc., generally DDR4 3200 is pretty much where I would stay in order to keep things nice and stable. Graphics card wise, again, an oldie but a goodie. We've gone with the Nvidia RTX 2070. This is the Founders Edition, which actually looks like a great card. There are some slight drawbacks of this particular GPU in the fact that you don't have zero fan technology, although if you want to check out how to actually enable zero fan technology for it, we have done a video on that, which we'll link in the video description, so that may be of interest to you. Power supply wise, the power supply generally is one of the more important things, and being that we are kind of looking at a mid-range PC here, I've gone with a half-decent power supply. So we've got the Coolermaster MWE 550 watt V2. So this is a fully modular power supply. So if you do want to add in a few more things later on down the line, then you certainly can do. You can pick these up for quite often on offer for around the sort of £40 mark, which is excellent, and we'll be showing you some other options in PC Part Picker a little bit later on. So if you can't find this specific one, and the same for all the other parts, if you can't find these specific parts locally, then we're going to give you other options which you may want to look into. In terms of storage, we've gone for a 1TB NVMe drive. This is PCI Express Gen 3 x 4. Again, due to the limitations of the B450 chipset, it's a little bit pointless going for a PCI Express Gen 4 drive, and also we can save ourselves a few quid as well into the bargain. Again, later on we'll be discussing the pros and cons of PCI Express Gen 3 against Gen 4 and alternatives, so if you do want to have a little bit more future proofing in your rig, then you can certainly can do, and actually for a very similar price. When it comes to the actual build itself, we did do a full build on this in actually one of our live streams, so we'll try and link that for you as well, so you can check it all out. It's quite a long stream, it's about an hour or so you may want to get a cup of coffee before you watch that, but actually not a bad case to build in. A few little gotchas, one of which was trying to put the power supply in after putting in the I/O connections for the HD audio. That was a little bit of a snafu, so I had to take that out, put the power supply back in and connect it up after. But yeah, other than that, it was a pretty much straightforward build, went very well. The fans, as you can see, do look really nice, and we've managed to tie them in with MSI sensor to get the fan speeds controlled through the hub, which is included from Aerocool. And this worked out to be really nice. It is kind of almost silent. There is a little bit of a whine coming from the actual graphics card, again due to the ball bearing fans used in those Founder Editions cards, but it isn't obnoxious, and obviously the side panel is off at the moment, so the noise is a little bit more evident. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at some gaming prowess and see how well it does. Obviously RTX 2070 isn't a slouch, and in its prime was a fantastic card, although it is getting on a little bit more now, which is why we can pick them up for pretty decent prices. I actually paid £225 from this one from one of our regulars, David Aitken. Thank you very much, David. And yeah, it's a great card, and it powers through games. So let's take a look at some examples now. First one is going to be Far Cry 5 New Dawn, and it runs absolutely great, as you'll see from the footage. No problems at all. This is pretty much all high settings, 1080p, no resolution scaling, just pretty much raw experience. And it runs really well, 100 frames per second, very easy to do, 120, 140, etc., depending where you are in the map. But yeah, it runs absolutely great. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could increase some of the performance. So if you wanted to lower some of the settings to get the frame rate up a little bit more, maybe you've got a 240 frames per second monitor or something along those lines, then you can certainly reduce some of the settings to get a higher output. Also, classic like CSGO, played some CSGO earlier. Again, this basically runs great on anything, but this is with all the settings maxed out, 1080p gaming again, and you're looking at 240, 260 frames per second pretty much everywhere on the map. The dips and lows are pretty much non-existent. You do find with some other graphics cards a little bit lower down the range, you will get those spikes where it goes at 240 frames per second or higher, but you will find then when you get into more congested areas or different parts of the map, you go down to the kind of 100s, maybe 120. Whereas with this RTX 2070, it remains pretty stable at a pretty constant 240 frames per second. A little bit of classic Rocket League. Now this is basically going to run so well at 1080p that you are going to max out the game's engine, which I believe is somewhere around the 422 frames per second mark, which it does quite easily in some instances, but obviously it will drop down as well. You will find as well, if you're using slightly older hardware, you may find that you get a little bit of coil whine when you put the frequencies that high or the frames per second that high. Whereas if you've got a nice monitor, which will do maybe 144 or 165 Hertz, maybe put your V-Sync on just to cap it so you don't get the whine. And also it's going to save you energy and also run a little bit cooler. Playing Fortnite, even now with the new Fortnite update, with all the new effects in it, it still runs really well. Everything turned up to the max, or at least what the system thought was the max. It goes in and it basically detects its own settings. So we've got ray tracing, shadows and all that kind of good stuff going on, and it looks absolutely amazing. Although this video is recorded at 1080p and then upscaled to 4K for the rest of the video, so it may not look as good as it could do, but certainly while I was playing it, yeah, quite often I was looking away into the distance, looking at some of the features and settings, and it just, yeah, it looks absolutely amazing and runs really, really well. Another title which runs really well, one of my favourites, Wreckfest, again 1080p, ultra settings, runs absolutely fantastically, no qualms whatsoever, and even though my gameplay wasn't brilliant and I didn't do particularly well in the Badger bug, it is still an extremely enjoyable experience. Something more of a AAA title, and one which punishes most systems, and I deliberately put this to the highest possible settings, so full DirectX compatibility, full DirectX shadows, shaders, ray tracing, all that turned on, and it did kind of bring it to its knees a little bit, but still we are getting 30 frames per second pretty much everywhere, and it doesn't dip much below that. Obviously 30 frames per second isn't great, but it is that cinematic experience and it is very console-like, and it does ultimately look absolutely amazing with all the shadows, reflections and lighting going on, especially when you're in the middle of the city where there's so much lighting, so many different points of the light actually bouncing off of places. A very hard thing for most graphics cards to do. Clearly, if you wanted to, you could turn off the ray tracing, lower the settings a little bit more, and it will bump up your settings and your frame rate accordingly. Lost life film. When it comes to synthetics, 3D Mark's Time Spy runs, again, very, very good. And actually, I was really surprised. Normally, whenever I run Time Spy with any of my systems, it generally gets either basically dead on what is average or slightly under, because I've got a bunch of other things running in the background, various launchers, etc., and also stuff to monitor the settings. But I was very surprised. This actually got very near to 9,000 points, so very happy with that, and it was above average performance. So for this slightly aging Ryzen 5 3600 and its RTX 2070 compadre, I feel it done absolutely great. Also, other things like productivity, if you're running something like Cinebench, which is a pretty good test these days, again, very similar score actually, just under 9,000 points, which is pretty much what you would expect to see for a Ryzen 5 3600 in this kind of setup. You may be able to squeeze a little bit more out of it. This is running with Precision Boost Overdrive set to Auto, which on MSI boards does seem to be a very conservative setting, so it doesn't boost up over more than 75 megahertz. If you're lucky, somewhere around 50 is generally what you're likely to see. Obviously, you can overclock these processors quite well should you want to squeeze a little bit more out of it. When it comes to temperatures, again, temperatures very, very good. Even under gaming conditions, the processor isn't being taxed a great deal. We're looking at somewhere between 40 to 50% in general across the board. And the graphics card normally is going to be pegged somewhere between the sort of 80 to 100%, depending on the game, your frame rate, etc., etc. But temperature-wise, the graphics card didn't get much over 70 degrees Celsius, and with the processor in gaming instances, it was around about the 65 degrees mark, which is absolutely fine for this processor. And even under the full load that is Cinebench, the processor didn't see much more than 70 degrees. So it performs pretty well, but what is the cost? So let's head over to the computer now and we'll take a look at PC Part Picker. So here we are, this is our PC Part Picker list, which I've saved. I'll link this in the video description as well, so if you want to use this as some form of template, you certainly can do. This is going to be for the UK prices, so obviously if you're in other countries, it will convert your prices to your local region. And also we'll have these items linked in the video description, so you want to pick them up from Amazon, etc., or eBay, places like that. So processor-wise, Ryzen 5 3600, as we said, you can pick these up very easily these days on the new and used market, for that matter, for somewhere around the £100 mark. I think I paid about 90 for mine, which was from Facebook Marketplace, but yeah, £100 you can get them very easily, places like CEX, that kind of stuff, and you do get a warranty with CEX, which is always a nice thing to have, if it turns up and it hasn't got bent pins, but I digress. So moving on to the cooler, we went with the Arctic Freezer A35A RGB CPU cooler. This is actually pretty expensive at £42 at the moment, I feel. Personally, I would probably think about maybe actually leaving that off and just using the stock cooler. The Ryzen 5 3600 runs absolutely fine with the stock included Wraith Stealth cooler. I would be inclined to save the £42 here, or perhaps swap this out for something like one of the XT214s or XT224 SE coolers, which we quite often find for around about £20, but this is what I had on hand, so this is what I went with. Motherboard wise, now this is a tricky one. The MSI B450 Gaming Pro Carbon is a great board, and it's got all the features on there. You've got your Wi-Fi, etc., your Bluetooth, and it's a great looking board. It's got addressable RGB, which not many B450 boards had, and still for that matter, some B550s don't these days. So it's a really nice board. If you can get your hands on one of those, I would certainly recommend it. No problems there whatsoever. The RAM actually is on offer at the moment from eBuyer here in the UK, £46.50 for the Patriot Viper Steel. Great setup, runs really well, looks really nice. Is a little bit on the higher profile, but in this particular instance it isn't a problem. But if you are looking to put this into a system where maybe your CPU cooler is going to overhang your RAM a little bit, you may want to take another look at maybe some Corsair LPX RAM, just in case. So, but yeah, £46.50 for 16 gigs of RAM, I think at the moment is excellent value for money. When it comes to our silicon power drive, this is what we use in ours. We actually use the A80, but this is the closest I could find at the moment. It seems that most places are out of stock of those at the moment because they were very good drives. Again, you might want to change that out. There are other options available. The Kioxia drives are very good at the moment, and also you've got the Crucial P2s and P3s, which are often on offer for slightly less. So you can pick up a 1TB NVMe drive, PCI Express Gen 3x4, at the moment for somewhere in the region of about £60 to £70. This one we've put in at 80, just to give you an idea of pricing, but I would probably go with one of the other brands now, being that this is slightly more expensive. When it comes to the graphics card, we picked this up as a used one, so this was £225, like I said, from Dave Aitken, and it's a great card. No real issues with it other than the zero fan thing, which does bother me slightly, but it isn't the end of the world and it does perform really, really well. The options I would have for swapping these parts out, we'll go through shortly actually, but we'll go on with the rest of it first of all. So the Aerocool Aero One Eclipse, again £37 give or take, is what you can pick this up for when it's on offer. When it's not on offer, it's like £60, £70, which I would certainly look elsewhere. But having said that, PC cases do seem to be very expensive here in the UK at the moment, along with motherboards. So those are the two kind of problem areas at the moment. When it comes to the power supply, like I said, we've got the Coolermaster one in here, but you can get a GameMax RGB Rainbow 550 watt gold 80 plus for £42.99, which is absolutely fine for this kind of level of build. Obviously, power supply wise, you can put in there what you choose. If you want to put in another brand, if you want to put in a Seasonic or something, that's entirely up to you. Ultimately, it's your budget. And as you can see, when it comes to budget, we have gone a little bit over our 600 by £50, but we can get rid of that CPU cooler and straight away we are pretty much within the £600. So I think we've done pretty well here. So some of the things that I potentially might look at changing here would be the motherboard. So the motherboard I would possibly consider, and actually let's go in now and I will edit this. So now we can go in and we can edit this. So motherboard wise, let's look for something else. Now something which I picked up myself recently, which was a B550, if I can find it, was a Gigabyte model, which was actually on offer, which is this one, the Gaming X V2. Now these are actually on Amazon at the moment, so they clearly haven't updated the prices. They're going for £90. So we'll stick that one in, and actually CCL, there, they're showing out of stock at the moment. We'll put it in anyway, and I'm going to change that price just so we can see what is going on here. I paid £90 exactly, I believe it was, from Amazon, and the CPU will do the same thing as we had before, so 3600. We'll add one of those. The cooler will stick with what is actually in there. Memory, we can go with the Viper 4650, throw that in there. And storage wise, we'll go with a 1TB NVMe. We'll basically just go with whatever's currently the cheapest. Actually, Kingston MV2, that's a very good drive, and PCI Express Gen 4x4, so that's going to be perfect for our board. And we're probably going to get it a little bit cheaper as well, so that is great. Video card. Now what we're going to be looking for now is a 6600, which I think is actually going to be a good alternative if we can pick one up. So we've got the XFX Speedster Swift 210, RX6600 8GB at 243. These do appear a little bit cheaper at times. So we've got the Asus Dual there at 233. So that's not much more than we paid for our used RTX 2070. So we're going to stick that in there. And case-wise, case again is going to be one of those awkward ones. There isn't going to be something which suits everybody, so let's do something which is kind of almost similar. If we can find something with a few fans in, so let's go with the Vampiric. That's a pretty close approximation. So we'll go with that, being it is MSI. We've now got the Gigabyte board. Power supply, and we can do the same thing here. So we'll go with a 550 watt Rainbow one. So we'll go like for like on there. And I think that is pretty much it. I think that's all the parts again. So we've taken out the CPU cooler. So this is all brand new stuff. We've got a better motherboard now, arguably a better graphics card in some instances. The RX6600 and the RTX 2070 kind of trade blows in a lot of titles. Although obviously if you want ray tracing, then the Radeon series is kind of pointless for that. But if you just like rasterization in your games, it's going to be fine. There we go. With the shipping fee, we're at $622.46. So we've managed to save a little bit of money, about almost £30 there. And this is all brand new stuff, all completely warranted. So yeah, I don't think you've got too many issues there at all. Again, you could save a few quid by getting the Ryzen 5 3600 maybe used. But even so, that's not a bad price at all. Okay, so there you go. There are some things you can do to get yourself a really nice little gaming PC for around about £600 here in the UK. At the time of filming. Now, Obviously, things are very much in flux, as they always are, so this video could either age really badly or very well, depending how things go. I'm hoping it ages quite well for longevity purposes. But I think £600 for a gaming PC, obviously there is something else you can put in here as well. If this is going to be a new build, you're going to need a Windows license, so feel free to head over to premiumcdkeys.com and pick yourself up a Windows 10 or Windows 11 product CD key for basically less than a fiver, which you can't go wrong with. So do check those out. Links to that will be in the video description. And also, if you're at it and maybe you're going to be doing maybe a little bit of work with this thing as well, then you can pick up a Premium CD Keys Office key as well for Office 2019 or 2022, or whichever version is currently available, for somewhere in the region of about £10 to £15, depending on which version you go for. So definitely worth looking at. You could potentially save yourself a fortune there if you're building a new PC. Maybe you don't want any of these parts at all, but you do want a license key, then head over there and you can probably pick up a good deal. But I think actually for £600 these days, like I said, times are in flux, prices are changing all the time. £600, this plays absolutely great. And if you'd have bought the same sort of thing maybe 2 years ago, you'd have been paying way over £1,000 for this. So prices have dropped considerably. Obviously things in the world have changed considerably, but I still feel £600 for a PC like this with the performance it can offer at 1080p, or squeezing in some 1440p gaming out of it as well. Obviously do temper your expectations and you will need to lower your settings a little bit, but certainly it will do it at a reasonable frame rate. So anyway, let me know what you think about this one in the comments section below. If you want to see how the build went in this, then we will link that in the video description also, so you can check all that out. Any of the items that you've seen in this video or anything you've got questions on, feel free to reach us on our Discord and we can go through and basically select parts for your system build should you need to. But for now, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.